of 2023. This time, the ceasefire calls for at least 6 weeks of calm and the hope that maybe it could be permanent. Large-scale relief efforts are underway, and we have images, as you can see here, of aid trucks finally starting to cross into Gaza from Egypt. And we now have the names of the 3 female hostages expected to be released today. Take a look here at your screen. You can see those 3 women. Joining us now is ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Milroy. Thank you for being with us, Mick. You're a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. Appreciate you being with us. First, let's talk about how significant this ceasefire is and your thoughts on how it all unfolded.
This far, and of course, compromises on both sides from the Israelis and Hamas. And now we are where we are. But this is a very delicate situation because neither side trusts each other at all. So every step of this has to be choreographed. The release of the female hostages is going to coincide with the increase in humanitarian aid desperately needed for the people that live in Gaza, and also the release of Palestinian prisoners, which is a big sticking point for Israel, some of whom were serving life sentences for crimes. So this is a very tense situation, but the more that happens as scheduled, the more trust will be built and the more likely.
And that it's because neither side really trusts each other, and that's why it's so important that we see things stick to the timetable as it's been laid out, specifically around humanitarian aid. As you just mentioned, you're involved in the humanitarian aid effort in Gaza. What can you tell us about those efforts, especially given how tense and delicate all of this is and how much need there is there in Gaza?
Well, there is a huge need for not only food, but also fuel. Fuel runs the hospitals and medicines, and it's fuel. And it's not just to get into Gaza, it's also to get throughout Gaza. 300 of the 600 per day are supposed to go into the northern part of Gaza, which is very difficult. It's difficult to transit inside Gaza. The roads are destroyed. And of course, there are criminal gangs that try to ceasefire agreement, because that is a critical component that needs to happen, just like the hostages all need to come out.
And so, as you were saying, according to that agreement, there are certain things that we are looking to happen at specific times. And we've seen some fluctuations in that already this morning, 30 minutes ago. What does it mean when we do see some deviation from that agreement? When we see a 30-minute difference, does this just reflect how delicate it is, the lack of trust? Or do these things just sometimes move this slowly? What's it mean, Mick?
That's a good question, Janae. So sometimes it could mean hesitation that is more political, if you will, part of the negotiation. Sometimes it's just practical. One of the issues has been how many of these hostages, we believe there's 90 still left, are alive. That is something that's normally done at the beginning because there's an active conflict. So one of the problems is for Israel is to find out which hostages are still alive so they know what they're negotiating to do. And that might be something that now is improved as the ceasefire goes into effect. It's going to cause a lot of tension, as you would imagine, not just with the families, of course, but the entire population of Israel. It's going to challenge it if there is a lot of deceased hostages that are coming out, especially in these this first wave and this first phase of 33 hostages. But this is a very delicate situation and something that we have to really see whether it can go forward.
And this is all part of the first of this 3-phase agreement. Mick, you have a lot of friends we know in Israel. Talk about the concern in getting to the second phase, because, again, this is still the first phase that we're working through. But all of this
political situation where Prime Minister Netanyahu is a coalition government. As you mentioned, several already resigned because they don't want to see a ceasefire agreement. Going into the second phase means a full withdrawal of the IDF back into Gaza if this ceasefire then breaks later. So it's a very significant decision. There'll be a lot of discussion of what would fill the vacuum, the security vacuum. Would it be a multinational force? If not, what would it be? What would be acceptable to both the Israelis and the people in Gaza? So it's a very delicate situation now, but it's only going to be more difficult.
And how delicate it is, and really appreciate you, Mick, for being here to break it down and explain to us all of the context surrounding it. So thank you, Mick Milroy. And President Joe Biden will be delivering remarks at approximately 10:30 this morning, so we will be watching for those and bring you those remarks live when they happen. In the meantime, though, another big story that we're following this morning, this story all over your news feeds and beyond. TikTok is now dark as the U.S. ban goes into effect. ByteDance, the Chinese company that owns the app, shut it down before the midnight deadline, impacting sorry, TikTok isn't available right now. The app stores that are run by Apple, Google, and Samsung also began removing the app. So I want to bring in ABC's Elizabeth Schulze and Google Tech Policy Fellow Mike Muse to talk about a lot of this. Mike, I want to start with you. TikTok's owner said that they felt that their future was uncertain. And shortly after President-elect Trump chimed in to say that he would announce whether he'd offer a lifeline for the app, save them or not. How possible is it for Trump to potentially revive the app?
Great question. Well, we've seen already for the incoming Trump administration. What was interesting is that in TikTok going dark yesterday, what they were alluding to was that the insurance of President Biden through his press secretary saying that there would be no action taken by the Biden administration in terms of issuing fines and penalties. Feel comfortable with that assurance enough without anything being written that they could be in violation and would face incredible financial fines. And so due to the uncertainty in that gray area of passing the ball, that is why TikTok chose to go dark. And that's why these app stores removed TikTok from being.
With the Chinese owners that a deal is underway or that it could be coming as the law demands?
We don't know exactly, Janae, what's going on behind the scenes. There have been companies that have expressed interest in buying TikTok on hold, which President-elect Trump could do potentially, and potentially is the key word there because the legality of that's even questionable, would need to show that there is very clear evidence that this sort of sale is underway. There's very strict conditions that would need to be met. And so far, we have not seen that kind of evidence come out. So there are undoubtedly going to be some buyers who would be interested in getting a slice of TikTok. The questions are, does the Chinese government approve that sale? And especially, would it approve that sale with the algorithm? Because so far it's indicated it would not. The algorithm, Janae, is really what makes TikTok so special in so many ways. It's why other U.S. competitors like Instagram and YouTube have not been able to compete at the same level, could keep users. Sort of sale could include that, but who knows what could happen once Trump actually takes office tomorrow.
Well, and that algorithm that you mentioned, Elizabeth, is what's so fascinating because, as you said, it's really what sets TikTok apart. And TikTok is what so many users are after, many of them now switching to apps like Rednote. Mike, does that raise other concerns when they're going from one Chinese app to another? Talk about that and how it's related to the algorithm.
Really great question. In the absence of the U.S. not having any regulations regarding tech policy, the U.S. government actually doesn't have a clear North Star to what they want of the United States. We also, too, see Americans using or being able to go over to Rednote, which is also, too, owned by Chinese companies, which has less guardrails and less restriction, less transparency, and less oversight. It is to figure out how they choose to safeguard the American public, including data, including, Janae, which we haven't even talked about, deep fakes. I believe deep fakes has as much consequence to the American public of misinformation than any of these social media app platforms based upon the technology aspect of that. The algorithm is so special around TikTok, which is why so many American users love it, because it's organic. They don't use products and tools to which users need to in order to advance their content to go viral. And so that is a unique one to make this purchase.
Well, and it's so fascinating because it makes you wonder if this Chinese company has this app that has something so unique, why do we not have an American version of that kind of app? But Elizabeth, I want to ask you about the sort of the other side of this argument, which is from a Chinese perspective. Are America under these terms? We need it to change in this way. Are American companies allowed to operate freely the way that they decide in China, or is there a flip side to this sort of same thing that happens in China, where Google and et cetera are limited?
It's really, really important context, Janae. You're getting at when a lot of the tech analysts I'm talking to, I level, because at the end of the day, companies like Google, Facebook, even X cannot operate in China. They're blocked there. And so we actually did just see Elon Musk put out a tweet saying he doesn't think that TikTok should be banned because it limits free speech, but he also said it should be allowed in China. Now, that would be a dramatic change in policy from the Chinese government. The internet there looks nothing like what we see here. People actually often use VPNs, which is one of the solutions that people in the U.S. are thinking about trying to use when it comes to accessing TikTok, a virtual. There are broader conversations between the relationship of U.S. and China that will be taking place once President Trump takes office that could redefine some of those big business relationships. You've got to imagine today that those big tech companies would love to get a share of those users in the world.
Big government, big corporation, discussions, negotiations, all of that.
With Israel. That ceasefire took effect just hours ago at 4:15 this morning Eastern time. It was delayed nearly 3 hours because Israel said it had not received the names of the 3 hostages who were to be released. But then those names were released, and I want to show you these live images right now. These are actually, this was recorded just moments ago. This is in Gaza. You can see the chaotic scene right there. It's not clear exactly what was happening here, but our understanding is that the hostages were in some of these vans, and this was the crowds in the streets. The Hamas fighters were actually waving their guns at some of the people to try to get them out of the road. Chaotic moments just a short time ago. Now, the first hostages freed are 3 women, 24-year-old Romy Gonen, 28-year-old Emily Damari, and 31-year-old Daron Steinbrecher. They have spent 471 days in captivity. Now, under this first phase of the deal, 33 hostages will be released over the next 6 weeks, and aid can now begin to move into Gaza. We've seen these images here, those aid trucks already lining up on the Egyptian side of the Gaza border. As part of the exchange, they would then go in, and you can see them going through the gates. And as part, visited the bullet-riddled homes of 2 of the women who were taken hostage and heard the stories of their abduction by Hamas. 2 Americans, Keith Siegel and Siegel Deckelchen, are not expected to be released today, but are supposed to be in that first group of 33. Again, about 250 people were kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th, 2023. It's believed that about 60 hostages are still alive. Let's go ahead and get to our team out in the field. We have ABC's chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, who's in Tel Aviv for us. Ian, we saw the images, the chaotic moments of that transfer. What's the latest on the ground there?
Of grieving, finally some smiles on the faces of the people gathered here. I'm just going to get the cameraman just to swing across into the crowd here. We've seen people cheering, we've seen people clapping, we've seen people hugging each other. Everyone is glued to Channel 11 News. If we turn around, it'll stay on that image, but we believe that the hostages are now on their way to the IDF. As you said, we're expecting 33 phased over 6 weeks. It'll be 3 and then 4 and then a much larger tranche at the end there. We are, as you said, expecting those 2 Americans, Israelis, to also be part of that relief. Too much suffering. But they're also aware they want all the hostages home. Not all of them are alive. We know a significant number of those who are left behind are unfortunately dead, but still the families want their loved ones. I mean, again, just look at these scenes. Finally, seeing people smiling, seeing people cheering, something to be relieved about after so much heartbreak and pain to actually settle in, still have to be undergone. This is going to be very hard for the Trump administration. They've been actively involved together with the Biden team in negotiating this stage of the deal with the Qataris, with the Egyptians, and other teams also involved. But negotiating what Gaza looks like afterwards, the scenes that we've been seeing is Hamas are on the streets. It's Hamas who are in charge. Remember, the Israeli government right at the get-go set out that they were going to destroy Hamas, that Hamas couldn't be part of the solution afterwards. How celebrating, cheering, smiling. Similar scenes, of course, elsewhere in Gaza. We've seen people celebrating, but also in Ramallah, where people are awaiting their loved ones to be returned. Mainly women are going to be released, about 90 prisoners in this stage. I know Tom Sufi Burridge is there. It's getting loud here, so we'll hand back to you.
Come in. You were there just back in October and actually connected with the families and the communities of 2 of these young women who were taken hostage.
I walked through Kfar Aza, the kibbutz, where completely burnt things scattered around. You can imagine the fight to get that woman in Italy. Gali went over there and tried to save her, but he too was taken hostage in a battle. He was texting his family saying, there's smoke in here. We have to finally get outside of the house. And now 2 of those women are now free. Another woman also freed. She was at the music festival. Romy, all of those women have been through so much, and you can see that chaos of transferring them from those vehicles, what that must have been like after all these months.
And can only imagine what those family members are feeling as they're waiting to actually embrace their loved ones for the first time. Martha, thank you so much. We've also been learning that President Biden will speak in just a little bit later this morning. He's been briefed throughout the course of the morning. We'll have live coverage on all of our platforms here, including ABC News Live and abcnews.com for continuing coverage. And then we'll have a full wrap-up here tonight on World News Tonight. For now, we'll return you back to regular programming. For some of you, that will be GMA. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
100 people lived. 62 of them were murdered. 19 were taken hostage. And I was right outside Emily and Daron's home, completely burnt. All of those women have been through so much, and you can see that chaos of transferring them from those vehicles, what that must have been like after all these months.
And can only imagine what those family members are feeling as they're waiting to actually embrace their loved ones for the first time. Martha, thank you so much. We've also been learning that President Biden will speak in just a little bit later this morning. He's been briefed throughout the course of the morning. We'll have live coverage on all of our platforms here, including ABC News Live and abcnews.com for continuing coverage. And then we'll have a full wrap-up here tonight on World News Tonight. For now, we'll return you back to regular programming. For some of you, that will be GMA. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
And our thanks to Whit. Thank you for streaming with us. I'm Janae Norman. Hamas releasing hostages as part of a ceasefire deal with Israel. That ceasefire took effect just hours ago at 4:15 a.m. this morning here on the East Coast. It was delayed nearly 3 hours because Israel said it had not received the names of the 3 hostages who were to be released today. But now the fighting has stopped. And for more now, let's bring in ABC News Chief Foreign Correspondent Ian Pannell. We will actually get to Ian in just a second. We're going to start with Mick Mulroy, ABC News national security and defense analyst and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. Mick, thank you so much for standing by and being with us. Can you just walk us through, since we last spoke with you about 20 minutes ago, all that has transpired, and you have talked with us about how delicate and how tense this situation is because of the lack of trust between these two sides, and we have absolutely seen that in the delays that have marked this first stage of the ceasefire, this first phase, 1 of 3. But we have now seen the transfer of those hostages, Mick.
Well, it is the trust factor that I think is really complicating this. Neither side wants to move entirely until they know the other side's doing that as well. So we're seeing several things happen simultaneously, likely choreographed. So the 3 female hostages should be released. At the same time, prisoners, and it's about a 30-to-1 ratio. So about 90 Palestinian prisoners will start being let out and then moved from the prisons in Israel. At the same time, humanitarian aid is going in larger quantities into Gaza. I think both sides are seeing this happen, which is why we're seeing movement forward. But we could see fits and starts like this every day until it is a very smooth process and both sides believe that they can trust the others to carry out their part of the bargain.
And even given that lack of trust and sort of the slow moving, the baby steps here, how significant, Mick, is this ceasefire?
Very significant. This is going to, of course, hopefully result in all the hostages that never should have been taken hostage coming out. It's going to result in a lot more humanitarian aid. So the agreement calls for 600 trucks a day going into Gaza to include fuel that will really help critical infrastructures like hospitals get set back up. So we're going to see this, I think, really soon, and it is critical that it happens for both the people of Israel and the people in Gaza.
All right, Mick, and you stand by because we will come back to you, but I now want to bring in ABC News Chief Foreign Correspondent Ian Pannell, who is live in Tel Aviv. And Ian, tell us about these three hostages, these three young women, and how Israelis are reacting there this morning. I was watching you on our special report with Whit Johnson, and you said that there is too much death, there's been too much division, too much suffering for this to be a moment of just sheer jubilation.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think relief is the word of the day. But we're seeing Channel 11 Israel on the big screen here, and there was three simple words that just led to an eruption of cheering. I've seen so many people in tears. It's a deeply emotional time. The three words were, "It is happening." Finally, confirmation that the three of the hostages, these three young women, one taken from the Nova Music Festival. I just want to show you her picture here. This is Romy Gonen. We spoke to her sister back in November 2023. She, her family, other families, supporters have been gathering in this square every single day to put the attention on their loved ones, on the more than 250 who were taken by Hamas. Tragically, not all of them are going to come back alive. We know that a number of them have been killed while in custody, but what you hear from people here repeatedly, yes, they're relieved that these three are on their way, that hopefully 30 more are going to be relieved, but that isn't enough. They're asking, why did this take so long? Why wasn't this deal done earlier? President Biden said very clearly that the deal that has just been agreed upon was on the table back in May 2024. And the other thing you hear from people here is bring them all home. And we've had people chanting that. But it's hard not to also see this as a celebration as well. After 15 months of trauma, of heartbreak, of dashed hopes, finally we're at the beginning of a process, albeit very fragile, no guarantees that this goes through the next two phases, but nevertheless, for today at least, relief and a moment to celebrate. Janae?
Today, at least, as we await those three women who were held captive for 471 days. Ian, thank you. Now we want to bring in our foreign correspondent, Tom Soufi Burridge, who is live in Ramallah in the West Bank. And Tom, tell us where you are, what the atmosphere is like there as this hostage and prisoner swap gets underway.
Yeah, Janae, we're just outside Ramallah, actually, and down the road here is Ophir Prison. It's a high-security Israeli prison. We were there earlier this morning. What we're expecting to happen is about 90 Palestinian prisoners are going to be bussed from a checkpoint the other side in that direction, Israeli territory, up into the West Bank this way. And actually, Israeli police, when we got near the prison earlier, were pushing people back. There was a little bit of tension then. Now things are calmer. I mean, just come this way, you should be able to see. I'm not going to go right up on the road, but if we just stick into the side here, you'll just see there's some people gathered over here. You can see this young child has got Palestinian flags here. So there is a sense of, I think, celebration here in the West Bank. Because remember, people here living in the West Bank have friends, have family in Gaza. And for the last 15 months, they have not known whether their relatives will survive. A lot of people here will know people have been injured or killed in 15 months of brutal war in Gaza. So, look, there's a real sense of anticipation in this area. People have been waiting for this moment. And again, as Ian was saying, this is day one, right? So this is the first week of the 6 weeks of hopefully ceasefire in Gaza and the initial phase of the deal. And so 90 Palestinian prisoners here today are hopefully coming out as part of this deal in the coming hours. I emphasize it will take hours potentially. You can see some people gathered here. But look, this is just the first week, and in the coming weeks, the coming 6 weeks, hundreds of Palestinian prisoners are expected to be released from Israeli prisons as part of this deal. Janae?
Cautious optimism, so much tension, so much relief, so much happening there. And Tom, we appreciate you, along with Ian and Mick, for being here with us as we sort through all of this. Thank you to all of them. And President Joe Biden will be delivering remarks on this breaking news any moment now. We will bring those remarks when they happen. In the meantime, I'm Janae Norman. Thank you for streaming with us. The news never stops. You can find us anywhere you stream live news. And if you're on the go, we are too. We're on the ABC News app and abcnews.com. More news is coming up next.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for streaming with us. I'm DeMarco Morgan, and welcome to ABC News Live Weekend. Let's take a look at your top headlines. Fire conditions improving in Southern California as the area is getting a temporary much-needed break from the Santana winds. State officials now focusing on finding out what caused the massive wildfires that claimed the lives of more than 24 people. At least a dozen more are still missing as crews from across the state comb through the rubble. This is LA's district attorney says the city is cracking down on price gouging in nearby neighborhoods, adding that landlords will be prosecuted and publicly shamed. Well, the clock ticking down to the TikTok ban. The Supreme Court upholding the ban. Congress voted to ban it over concerns the Chinese-owned app poses a national security risk. It's now up to the incoming Trump administration to implement it. By the way, 170 million Americans use the app each month. The FDA banning the use of red dye number 3 in food products. The agency says it's changing its color additive regulations after response to a 2022 petition from health groups and activists. Now, red number 3 is a synthetic food dye that gives foods and drinks a bright cherry red color. According to the FDA, at least 2 studies have shown that high levels of food dye were linked to cancer in rats, but did not see that in humans. Food manufacturers have until 2027 to reformulate their products, and drug makers have until 2028. And now turning to our top story, the mother of a Navy SEAL recruit who died after intense Hell Week training almost 3 years ago is speaking out. Regina Mullen is demanding accountability for her son's death after the Navy ended its own investigation without holding public hearings, and she says with little explanation. Will Reeves sat down with her for this ABC News exclusive.
A mother's anger and demand for accountability.
He was just trying to be a hero and protect people, and it happened by his own country, by his own military.
Regina Mullen's 24-year-old son Kyle died in February 2022 after completing Navy SEALs Hell Week training. The grieving mother revealing to GMA that the cases against the men she blames for her son's death were dismissed by the Navy, and she says she hasn't been told why.
Who canceled these hearings?
I don't know. They didn't tell me.
Nearly 3 years ago, Kyle Mullen had just successfully endured the 120-hour week of brutal training that pushes SEAL candidates to their physical and mental limits.
I got a text that said Hell Week secured. So I immediately called him and he answered, and he was out of breath, and he said, "Hey, Mom, I did it. Hell Week secured." And I said, first I'm like, "Oh my God, you're all happy." And then I'm like, "Wait a minute, are you all right? Are you in a hospital? You don't sound good." And all he said to me is, "Mom, I love you, don't worry about me."
Hours later, Kyle died from bacterial pneumonia. The final medical check showing swollen legs that required him to be sent back to his barracks in a wheelchair, with abnormalities in his lungs and severe trouble breathing. A Navy investigation cited failures across multiple systems that led to a number of candidates being at a higher risk of serious injury, with inconsistent medical monitoring and lack of training among commanding officers, and an at-all-costs mindset among the candidates.
So you have a failed leadership and under a command that killed a man unnecessarily and injured many. I think it's pretty reasonable to ask for accountability.
The investigation also looked into allegations of the use of performance-enhancing drugs among SEAL candidates. Authorities say they found a bottle labeled as human growth hormone in Mullen's car, but investigators determined that Mullen died in the line of duty and not due to his own misconduct. Regina Mullen says the medical examiner told her they did not test for steroid use.
She said that they didn't test for it because it was irrelevant to the cause of death. Right from the medical examiner, the Navy medical examiner.
Mullen insists Captain Brad Geary, who was in charge of her son's trainee class, and Commander Dr. Eric Ramey are responsible. Now, with the case dismissed, Regina says questions remain about the quality of her son's medical care and that she's not been provided with answers.
The Navy's not giving me what I'm asking for, the medical treatment of Kyle's care. They're not providing it. Why won't they provide it?
We're trying to figure out what they're hiding. It's simple as that.
I want the Board of Inquiry to be reinstated, is what I really want, so it can go public.
A lawyer for Captain Geary releasing a statement to ABC News saying, "This case was badly mishandled from the beginning. When we were noticed for the Board of Inquiry, it became very clear that a comprehensive investigation had never been done, and the deciding officer hadn't had access to all of the evidence. Through the discovery process, the Navy was forced to gather all the relevant evidence, which made continuing the case unsustainable. An attorney for Dr. Ramey telling ABC News, "We invested a substantial amount of time investigating the case with the assistance of top medical experts. The overwhelming evidence confirmed that Dr. Ramey met the medical standard of care." The Navy declining comment, citing privacy considerations for the officers.
From a legal standpoint, how abnormal is this timeline and this process in general?
Cases sometimes take a long time, and that can be frustrating. The problem in this case is that when we have a dismissal, we don't have a basis for it. Secondly, when we're doing our investigation and we can't find documents, we have to question where are the documents, was there ever treatment? If there is treatment, why didn't it follow the military's protocol on medical standards?
Do you wish Kyle never went to the Navy?
Of course I do. Yeah. He'd be here today. Before he left for the Navy, I said, how am I going to live my life if something happens to you? He said, Mom, you're the strongest person I know. You got this. I feel like he's counting on me to do it. If I don't, who will?
And many thanks to Will for that report. And by the way, since her son's death, Regina says she has seen some improvements to the medical protocols, saying candidates' vitals are checked more consistently and preventative antibiotics are administered prior to Hell Week so sailors don't get pneumonia like Kyle did. But Regina says more work needs to be done. When we come back, viral TikTok star Bailyn Dupree opens up about living with Tourette syndrome. What she says is the only thing that ever holds her back. We're back in a moment.
Rise, 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 and thrive. No pizza.
Still have moderate to severe ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease symptoms after taking a medication like Humira or Remicade? Put them in check with Rinvoq, a once-daily pill.
When symptoms try to take control, I got rapid relief with Rinvoq. Check.
When flares tried to slow me down, I got lasting remission with Rinvoq. Check. And many were in remission, even at nearly 2 years.
And Rinvoq helped visibly reduce damage of the intestinal lining. Check.
Rapid symptom relief, lasting remission.
And visibly reduced damage. Check.
Rinvoq can lower ability to fight infections. Before treatment, test for TB and do blood work. Serious infections, blood clots, some fatal. Cancers including lymphoma and skin, serious allergic reactions, GI tears, death, heart attack, and stroke occurred. CV event risk increases in age 50 plus with a heart disease risk factor. Tell your doctor if you've had these events, infection, Hep B or C, smoked, are pregnant or planning. Don't take if allergic or have an infection.
Put UC and Crohn's in check and keep them there with Rinvoq.
Ask your gastroenterologist about Rinvoq.
This is Carl. He never really thought much of his credit scores. Well, until he got Credit Karma and used his scores to move on up. By putting in the work to improve his scores, he got access to a better credit card. And that sofa she liked. Ooh, is that Saffron Sunrise? And when it came time to buy a home of his own, Credit Karma helped him take things to the next level. Just in time. Intuit Credit Karma. Download the Money app where your hard work pays off.
If we weren't proud of the craftsmanship and level of detail that go into every pair of Warby Parker glasses, well, we probably wouldn't show you how they're made, including this part, which is our favorite. Wow. And this is also great. For every pair of glasses or sunglasses sold, a pair of glasses is distributed to someone in need. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
You blow me away.
It's a new year of new deals.
I want to be your partner.
And new dreams.
This is for my son.
What you've been able to put together is insanely amazing.
Let's go! Yes!
New Shark Tank Friday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Friday nights at 9 on ABC. Mean true crime.
True murder mystery.
Shocking.
Sex, betrayal, lies.
A bombshell.
The greatest true crime stories. 2020. Friday nights at 9.
All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at more headlines this half hour. Israel and Hamas looking to implement a ceasefire deal agreed to this week. Phase 1 involves Israeli forces withdrawing east and allowing for more aid to reach Gaza, as well as the release of 33 hostages. News of the deal was met with relief and celebrations in both Israel and Gaza. And this all comes as dozens of Palestinians have been killed in Israeli strikes since the agreement was announced. South Korea's impeached president Yoon Suk-yeol was placed under detention. Authorities took him into custody in a dramatic scene at his residence Wednesday, and weeks after officials first tried to arrest him over his declaration of martial law last month. Yoon said he was cooperating with the Corruption Investigation Office, but called the probe an illegal investigation. Meantime, dozens of dead and surviving miners have been taken out of an abandoned gold mine, with hundreds more thought to still be inside. Police have been in a months-long standoff with the miners after a siege meant to crack down on illegal mining. The rescues come months after authorities initially tried to cut off food and supplies to the miners to force them out. And turning now to our next story, imagine seeing some of the worst possible things in social situations almost every time you're in one. That's the struggle facing some people with Tourette syndrome. You're about to meet an extraordinary young woman, Bailyn Dupree, who not only lives with the condition, but shares her challenges openly on social media with nearly 10 million followers. Our Ashin Singh has this story.
Cheers. Bailyn Dupree. She might look like your everyday 22-year-old with big dreams. What are your dreams?
Suck a dick. My dreams, okay.
But in an interview, unlike any other. The viral TikTok star with over 9 million followers, now bravely opening up even more about living with Tourette syndrome.
Tourette syndrome is a neurological, involuntary motor and vocal disorder that is chronic. Chronic. Slap that wiener, wrap that wiener, tap that wiener.
Could you have imagined that when you posted those first couple of TikTok videos of you baking, that you'd have a whole show?
I would have never imagined looking back, like making those videos and being like, this is where I'm gonna be. My fiber's been gasted.
You don't want people to define you by your Tourette. What do you want people to know about you?
My name is Bailyn Dupree. I love my dogs, I love Jesus, I love my family. There's also a very misleading conception that Tourette looks the same in everyone, and it doesn't. Corpolalia, which is the unseen words or gestures, is only in 10% of people who have Tourette. Stupid. And I do have that.
After finding fame online, she and her family now the stars of a new TLC show, Bailyn Out Loud.
I'm trying not to look at him.
Try not to look at who?
Him! Because every time I see a bald person, I have to tell them that they're bald. So, you're bald. You're
Every
bald.
day. It's my welcome, and I enjoy it.
People have said that I'm faking Tourette's for attention. Why would I do that? Would you want to live like this?
Ultimately, I didn't want to put anything out there in a way where it's going to be an exhibit like at a circus. She isn't living her life for somebody else's entertainment. And
I'm
it's
living
taken
my
a long
life and
time.
showing it for education.
Right.
Like, I'm putting myself out there and being vulnerable for other people.
In my opinion, Bailyn has one of the more severe cases of Tourette syndrome.
Hey, mother! That's the one thing that I'm so embarrassed about is my corpolalia. Like, I'm embarrassed by it.
Growing up in West Virginia, her tics were mild, unnoticeable even. Her condition, undiagnosed. But after the pandemic hit, they started to become unmanageable. Doctors telling her she had Tourette's at 18.
It was mild until it wasn't, and that's exactly when we started learning more about Tourette. It just kind of goes in like these awful like waves.
What are some of the tougher days like?
Walking. My legs lock up a lot. I have a lot of leg tics. It's hard to even brush my own teeth, do my makeup, like do everything in someone's daily day that someone usually doesn't think about. I am in consistent pain with my neck. Like, it's always like never healed. I have like a back brace, a neck brace that I wear for like when I throw my head back. Mom, look at all the people in there. My tics can come from anything. I have a gun.
Maybe try to whisper it.
Her explosive outbursts, her involuntary movements, creating incredible obstacles to overcome.
There was a scenario that happened where I was being followed around a store by one of my people that were in my grade, and I was being bullied, and I could obviously tell. And I was afraid of myself. Like, I didn't like myself. I was in therapy so many days a week, like just trying to figure out why me.
I can't even imagine how exhausting that kind of must feel for you. How do you, like, soothe yourself?
Through God and taking care of myself in ways that I've learned how to do. So for example, instead of screaming my tic in certain situations, I can whisper it, and it still gets out the urge that I have to tic.
But Balin, now in her 20s, eventually finding her way to even dating. Her boyfriend Colin, now at her side.
In the beginning, it was a little weird going out and having people stare at me, but Balin has the biggest heart, and I love her for her.
Colin is my medicine. That's the best way I'm gonna describe it.
Tippy top that wiener, tap the rotisserie chicken. Tippy top that wiener, tap the rotisserie chicken. Tippy top that wiener, tap the rotisserie chicken.
They met on a dating app, sparking a relationship uniquely their own.
He makes everything better. Every time I'm with him, my tics are better, I'm happier. He just is a great backbone.
In the kitchen, baking is another love of Balin's.
I just want to do anything that involves sweets, opening up a business that has sweets, something around that area.
Yeah.
But also not without its challenges.
Oh, there it goes.
I can do things in the kitchen. I kind of know, like, where my limits are. Like, I can't use the oven. Like, that's just a no.
But with a little help in the kitchen, she's ready for her next adventure.
One thing that I've learned about myself is that the only thing telling me no is me.
Balin's condition, unique. Her day-to-day challenges, something everyone can relate to.
Or if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And that's what we do. We're going far together.
These money.
That's what it is.
Sorry.
We're all going through things. Tourette syndrome seems to be one of the more outward and socially disabling conditions. And if you don't know enough about it, just shut your mouth and be kind.
Shut your mouth and be kind.
Right,
I love that.
you know?
And I also believe that you can't make yourself grow by being comfortable for your whole life.
And there are many thanks to Ashin for that report. Coming up, her powerful voice is the first sound you'll hear on Kendrick Lamar's hit album GNX. How Dayra Barrera was discovered by the superstar and her wish for the new year. Stay with us.
Nothing makes a gathering great like Eggland's best eggs. They're just so delicious. With better nutrition, too. For us, it's eggs any style, as long as they're the best. Eggland's best.
If we weren't proud of the craftsmanship and level of detail that go into every pair of Warby Parker glasses, well, we probably wouldn't show you how they're made, including this part, which is our favorite. Wow. And this is also great. Each pair comes standard with lenses that are scratch-resistant, anti-reflective, and UV protective. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
The news never stops.
From Tampa, we are here tonight as Hurricane Milton has just made landfall.
The surge just keeps coming up.
Right on the border between Ukraine and Russia. In downtown Tel Aviv, rockets or missiles coming in.
ABC News Live everywhere.
We're not far from where this rally took place, so just stick with us here.
Here in London. From the front lines.
Off the coast of Gaza. Wherever the story is.
We're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live, streaming free everywhere.
Here you leave today and enter
A world of galaxies.
A world of speed.
A world of other worlds.
for whatever you love. Infinite worlds await.
I'm Matt Rivers reporting in Houma, Louisiana in the eye wall of Hurricane Francine. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
All right, welcome back. Now to more headlines. Princess Kate says her cancer is in remission. The Princess of Wales says she's now focused on her recovery. And she made a surprise visit to the hospital where she was treated. After being largely absent from public life last year, the 43-year-old meeting with cancer patients to share her experience and offer thanks to the staff. Kate shocked the world when she announced her cancer diagnosis last March. Latin music superstar Bad Bunny making history with the first ever residency at Puerto Rico's largest arena. Fans stood in long lines for tickets to his 21-show run on the island this summer. The first 9 shows will be for local residents only, but non-residents can purchase tickets for the remaining dates. All shows, by the way, are expected to sell out. And Drake suing his own music label, Universal Music Group, for defamation. The suit centers around Kendrick Lamar's diss track, Not Like Us, that's turned into a Grammy-nominated hit. Drake's lawyers argue that the song falsely accuses Drake of being a pedophile and calls for violence against him. They tell ABC News this lawsuit reveals the human and business consequences to UMG's elevation of profits over the safety and well-being of its artists, while UMG calls the claims untrue. The lawsuit comes just weeks before Kendrick is set to headline the halftime show at this year's Super Bowl. And speaking of Kendrick Lamar, what does rap music and mariachi music have in common? Dayra Barrera. We sat down with LA's own mariachi singer to discuss her recent features on Kendrick Lamar's latest album, GNX. Here's Melissa Don.
Siento aquí tu presencia. La noche de anoche. Y nos ponemos a llorar.
There's been a lot of attention with your name. It is amazing, Dayra. You are a Mexican regional singer, a performer. We've known that you sang with so many groups, including mariachi group called Mariachi Corazón de Mexico. And we've also learned that you are a Los Angeles Dodgers fan. You go from having an incredible friendship with the late Dodgers fan, Fernando Valenzuela. He passed away just before the World Series for the Dodgers-Yankees matchup. And then you sang the tribute. And in that crowd, we know that you were noticed by so many people, including very famous rapper Kendrick Lamar.
Yes.
How were you feeling? Because you are now part of Kendrick Lamar's latest album, but going back to that day when you sang and you performed for
pull up that video once again that we were showing from earlier, if we could. That was inside Gaza. Just a little context as to what we were seeing here. This was the transfer of those hostages from Hamas. You can see, in the uniforms there, passing the hostages off to the Red Cross and putting them into vans to take them across the border. You could see emotionally charged moments there in Gaza. There were celebrations in the streets there. We also saw celebrations in the streets across Israel, and that's where we find our Ian Pannell, our chief foreign affairs correspondent, who is there in Tel Aviv right now. And Ian, describe the emotions that you're hearing from people.
Overwhelming emotions from people here. For 3 young women, their long nightmare is over, and there's a sense of relief here. This isn't really a celebration. This is the start of a process, and time and again, the crowd shout, Ashab, Ashab, which means bring them all home. I just want to quickly just give you a sense of the scene. Everyone here watching live on Israeli Channel 11, the release process, Daniel Hagari, the chief spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces, just confirming they are all in good condition. They are in Israeli hands, and right now, they're back in Israel. Whit.
All right, Ian Pannell for us. And once again, as part of this initial phase, 3 hostages, 3 young women have been released. This will continue for another 6 weeks, and we are expected to hear about more hostages that could be released in the coming days, including Americans. Stay with ABC News Live and abcnews.com for continuing coverage. We'll have a full wrap-up later this evening on World News Tonight. For now, I'm Whit Johnson in New York. We'll send you back to regular programming, and for some of you, that's GMA. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Good Sunday to you. I am Janae Norman, and we are beginning with breaking news. We just heard from President Biden on his last full day as president, making his first remarks on the first 3 hostages released by Hamas as part of a ceasefire deal with Israel. That ceasefire took effect hours ago, around 4:15 a.m. Eastern time this morning. It was delayed nearly 3 hours because Israel said that it had not received the names of those hostages, but now the fighting has stopped. We have seen the moment on video that those 3 women were handed over from Hamas to the Red Cross. For more now, I want to bring in ABC News White House correspondent Mary Alice Parks. You also were just listening along, Mary Alice, as we heard from President Biden. He said that this was the toughest negotiation that he's been involved in his decades-long career. Mary Alice, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, he said that after all of the destruction, the loss of life, the guns are silent over Gaza, how important it is that he was able to get this deal across the finish line in the final hours of his presidency. Of course, there's been a lot of questions about how he has been working with the incoming Trump team. You heard President Biden talk about how it was important that they were keeping the incoming team fully aware and fully involved. There's been pressure, of course, from President-elect Trump since the election to continue to work on these negotiations. He said that he is in complete support of this ceasefire deal. The White House acknowledging that the bulk of the ceasefire deal will have to be implemented under the new administration. You heard President Biden saying that he hopes this new team will be as persistent in pursuing peace in the region. It was interesting to listen to President Biden sort of defend this long negotiation. Of course, back in May, he basically outlined this deal. It has been months of false starts, months of hope and then frustration when they weren't able to get this done. But President Biden saying that the entire region now has an opportunity, a very different opportunity, from Lebanon to Syria to Iran being weakened. He said that this is a sort of global moment to bring about a new, and he's hoping, of course, more peaceful and more stable Middle East.
And he talked about some of the criticism that he received surrounding his support of Israel, that some believed it could draw the U.S. into further conflict. But he says that this shows that this was not the case. And as you mentioned, Mary Alice, President Biden said that this was the deal that he first put forward last May, and says that this was just a testament to how long that it has taken. But what can you tell us about the way this current administration and the administration that takes over, and I mean in less than 24 hours, how they had to work together to make this happen, especially as we've seen during this transition that has not been a hallmark of this time, Mary Alice?
No, but when it comes to this issue, we have heard nothing but lines about teamwork, about keeping both teams fully updated. It was interesting to listen to members of the White House today talk about President-elect Trump's helpful comments, they said, in the last few weeks of this negotiation. Of course, President-elect Trump has made very bold comments about having to bring hostages home. He has said that all hell will break out. People will pay if the hostages are not released by his inauguration, no doubt putting serious pressure on these negotiations. But look, the framework of this deal was led by the Biden administration. Of course, the Biden administration trying to take credit for getting it over the finish line in the last bit of this White House, of their time in the White House. And of course, just so much attention on the Americans they are still waiting to bring home. They are hoping that there are 2 Americans that will be released. That is the hope during this first phase. Keith Siegel and Sagi Dekelhen. It's been a lot of moments, passionate and emotional moments here at the White House when the families of the hostages, Janae, have met with President Biden. They've come out and talked to reporters on and off. They've talked about how they're proud of the work that the Biden administration is doing, but of course putting so much pressure to try to make sure the Biden team is doing everything, not forgetting their family members, and making sure that even in these final days that they are continuing to watch every single update and get their loved ones home.
Unimaginable what those families must be going through as they hear this news and are waiting with bated breath for more of those hostages to be released. Mary Alice Parks, thank you so much. And just want to reiterate some of what President Biden did say when he spoke shortly ago. Not only those 3 women who were released by Hamas today, but President Biden said that 4 more women will be released in the next 7 days and that 3 additional hostages will be released every 7 days thereafter, including at least 2 American citizens, as Mary Alice Parks just mentioned there. I want to go now to ABC News foreign correspondent Tom Soufi-Burridge, who is in the West Bank outside of Ramallah, and you're outside of a prison there. Tom, we can see that there is more activity since we last spoke with you. What can you tell us about the atmosphere there, what you're seeing and hearing?
Yeah, so we're on the road, Janae, down towards the Israeli prison this way. I mean, you can see there are people gathering here. There are actually some people holding Hamas flags over there, but we've seen mainly Palestinian flags. There are people waiting on this road. We'll just pull in here so that we're safe. Down that road is the Israeli prison. And basically what's been happening today is that a lot of Palestinian detainees have been transferred to that prison. And in the coming hours, we expect, as part of this deal, the first phase of this deal, or the first day of the first phase of this deal, I should say, we expect about 90 Palestinian detainees to be basically bussed from that Israeli prison down the road up in this direction. So people are waiting to welcome them back into the West Bank. These are women and men, young men and boys, and the vast majority of them have been held by Israel without trial. And we just spoke to the sister of a prominent Palestinian politician, a woman who is going to be one of the 90 released back into the West Bank today. And she said to me, they're happy that the prisoners are being released. They're sad about the amount of blood that's been spilt in Gaza, because you've got to realize, Janae, that people here in the West Bank have very close ties to people in Gaza, friends, family, etc., etc. And she also said to me, look, every life freed from an Israeli prison is, in her words, a victory for the people of Palestine. So, look, there is a sense of anticipation here. Those prisoners might not emerge from the prison for a few hours now. It's uncertain when this exactly will happen, but there is a mood of anticipation here, a bit of a mood of celebration. There hasn't been much tension, though, so far, thankfully, between the Israeli authorities policing the checkpoint down there and the local Palestinian crowd on this side.
It is good to hear that there's not much tension there, but certainly so much uncertainty. As you poignantly said, Tom, this is the first day of the first phase of this deal, and that's so important to point out. And now I want to bring in Mick Milroy with ABC News, one of our contributors, who can speak to just how delicate of a situation this is. And so, Mick, can you talk about exactly what Tom said there, the first day of the first phase of this deal, because of how delicate it is?
That's right, Janae, and it really comes down to the fact that neither side trusts each other at all. And they are, after all, mortal enemies. So they want to see the other side react and start putting things into place before they move, and that's why it's a very choreographed issue with moving Palestinian prisoners, moving Israeli hostages, and moving in critical food aid, humanitarian assistance into Gaza. This is also going to be with the IDF moving out of designated population centers that they agreed to under the agreement. So all this is going to happen every day. Any day it could break down. Let's all hope it does not. But any day it could break down, which is why maintaining the actual structure of the agreement is so important. It builds trust, and it is what's going to keep this going forward and getting more hostages out.
It is so important. And so we know that so much of the attention right now is focusing on those hostages being released. And then also, as Tom was just showing us, where there will be the prisoners released also. But Mick, what can you tell us about the humanitarian aid and how delicate that is because of how needed that aid is in Gaza?
It's desperately needed. The hospitals aren't running. Food is not getting to many in the population. And of course, the vulnerable, the elderly, and children are really suffering. There's also a significant issue with not getting enough medical supplies in, which is causing even more problems. So this has to happen. 600 trucks per day was the agreed upon amount. Part of that, about 300 of it, will need to go to the northern part of Gaza, where these populations are not getting the critical food aid that they need. It's very difficult to get there. The infrastructure has been destroyed, but that's part of the agreement. It needs to happen. And also part of these trucks are going to be fuel, because the fuel is needed to go into these generators to run these hospitals, which are currently off operation. So this is happening at the same time. It needs to happen, and it needs to maintain this level of assistance and potentially even increase to keep up with the need.
It is all so delicate. Mick Mulroy, thank you so much for talking to us. And now I want to bring in ABC News Chief Foreign Correspondent Ian Pannell, who is live in Tel Aviv amongst so many people who have waited so long for this day, Ian, but as cautiously optimistic as many are, they're not celebrating just yet.
Exactly. I think celebration is overstating it. There is relief. Of course there's some happiness. After 15 months of this long nightmare that everyone's been living in, every single day people have come to this square to talk about the hostages, to hold each other's hand, to hug, to just try and put the pressure on the government to prioritize the release of the hostages. When it was announced that finally the 3 young women were all in the hands of the IDF and non-Israeli Israeli soil, people hugged, people cried, people were cheering. I just want to pan the camera around, just show you the scene here. We've got hundreds and hundreds of people who've been camped out again day and night here. They've all gathered, they're watching Israeli Channel 11 public broadcaster. There they've been seeing pictures of the hostages. We just saw an incredible video of the father of one of the hostages and the family being given the news that they were in Israeli hands and that they were safe and sound. Israeli medical teams have examined all the hostages, and all 3, incredibly, seem to be in pretty good health. Remember, all 3 were also injured during that attack. A reminder, though, this is just day 1. So far, everything has gone to plan, but this is a very, very tentative peace process. Negotiations for phase 2 are due to begin in a few days' time, and then phase 3. By the end of phase 3, the vision, at least, is that all the hostages will be returned. There'll be hundreds of Palestinian prisoners also sent home, that peace will settle in, but there's still huge unanswered questions, primarily who governs Gaza afterwards. Again, you look at those incredible images from inside Gaza, the people who are in charge on the streets, the very people that the Israeli government has been trying to remove, Hamas.
And Ian, the crowd that you pointed to, we have an image of that crowd, and as you're talking, I'm looking, and you're seeing people looking like they're biting their nails, or these big hopeful eyes, but wiping away tears, and then you'll see a smile. There's so much emotion, and it might be hard for you right now, Ian, because you're still in the midst of it. But I want to know, as you've been covering this, what is it like being there at a point when there is so much emotion and still so much tension, and it is so delicate? What is it like to just be there, taking this all in with so many people, feeling so many different ways?
It's an infectious sense of emotion. You can feel the emotion deep inside every single person here, young and old, politically on the left, the right, man, woman, children. Everyone has lived through this nightmare, and it isn't over. That's really important to remember. But as I look around, I see people with their arms around each other. I see people who've been crying in tears. I mean, even people in the crowd have been hugging us as well. Even for our cameraman, a deeply emotional time for all Israelis. And of course, similar emotions on the other side. But you hear these chants again repeatedly throughout the crowd every few minutes. This chant of a single word, now, what it means is bring them all home now. No one can truly celebrate, at least until all the hostages are returned. And even then, it's going to be bittersweet at best because of what Israel has gone through, because of all the deaths, all the suffering, all the dashed hopes. People want to move on with their lives, and for now, they're seeing the first day of that process starting.
And Ian, as you reported earlier, 3 words that set off some sort of celebration in the crowd was "it is happening." Seeing that it is happening, that some of those hostages have been released. Ian, thank you for your tireless reporting out there. Our thanks also to Mary Alice Parks, to Tom Sufi-Birch, to Ian Pannell, of course, and to Mick Mulroy as we sorted through all of this. And we will follow this story all day long here at ABC News Live. Of course, there is still more news. So coming up, another major story. The clock has stopped on TikTok. Millions of users waking up to an error message. What's next for the app and what the president-elect is saying. Stay with us.
What I gotta fix.
Oh, come on. You break it, we take it. At Verizon, anyone can trade in any phone in any condition, guaranteed, and get Samsung Galaxy S24 for everyone in the family. Only on Verizon.
Dinner time distress is out.
Grocery store schleps are out.
Wallet draining delivery fees are out.
Convenience over quality is out, out, out.
Because with Cook Unity, leaving it to professional chefs is in.
Ready to enjoy weekly deliveries?
Are in.
Chickpea Buddha Bowls, in.
Adobo flat iron steak,
in.
And so in.
And a big sigh of relief, that's in too.
Cook Unity, the chef is in.
David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, the most watched newscast in America, and honored with the Emmy Award, winner for Outstanding Live News Program. More Americans watch World News Tonight with David Muir than any other newscast.
Welcome back to ABC News Live Weekend. Now to another major story we're following that has been all over our feeds and beyond. TikTok is now dark as a U.S. ban goes into effect. Moments ago, President-elect Donald Trump said he will issue an executive order tomorrow to get the app back online. Just within the last hour, the Biden administration accused the social media giant of blaming the president for this situation. An administration official told ABC News it's only kicking the issue to President Trump because of timing. ByteDance, the Chinese company that owns the app, shut it down before midnight, impacting more than 170 million of its American users, and it shut it down before that midnight deadline. Upon attempting to open TikTok, users were greeted by this message saying, sorry, TikTok isn't available right now. The app stores that are run by Apple, Google, and Samsung also began removing the app. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze has the latest.
Hey, Janae, and TikTok is now shut down for its 170 million U.S. users as this federal law banning the app officially takes effect today. So what that means when you try to log into TikTok, you're not going to see your feed, you're not going to post or scroll. Instead, there's a message that pops up. It says the service is unavailable. It goes on to say, we're fortunate that President Trump has indicated he'll work with us on a solution, and stay tuned. Also worth noting that TikTok's not available in the app stores from Apple or Google as of today. Now, we saw a lot of people posting their goodbyes, their farewell messages, but those farewells might be short-lived. And one reason for that is that this ban takes effect one day before President-elect Trump takes office. Trump this morning vowed again to try to save TikTok, but his options to do that legally are limited. There is a provision in the law that allows a one-time 90-day extension, but it's not clear if that would apply to Trump as of tomorrow. And it would also need to show that there is real significant progress toward a sale of TikTok. Basically, the whole point of this law, Janae, was to get TikTok to cut ties with its Chinese owner, ByteDance, because there are national security concerns with that Chinese ownership. This law was passed with bipartisan support in Congress. It was unanimously upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, and those concerns have been around for a while, and those concerns still exist today. So what Trump might try to do is try to broker some sort of deal to cut ties with that Chinese ownership. So far, we haven't seen very clear signs that some sort of sale is underway, but the president vowing to try to make this back available. TikTok CEO, of course, worth noting, will be sitting at inauguration tomorrow and is now campaigning with Trump at an event later tonight, Janae.
All right, we certainly will see what happens. Our thanks to Elizabeth Schulze. And for more on TikTok going dark for millions of Americans, I want to bring in entrepreneur, philanthropist, and influencer Bethany Frankel. Bethany, thank you so much for being with us. We were just talking about the Walmart Birkin bag a couple weeks ago. So now we're talking about TikTok, girl. You were live on TikTok in those last minutes before the app went dark. You were talking with Spencer Pratt, Alex Earl, talking to your followers, saying goodbye. Everyone was on edge. What was that vibe like? What were people saying? What were you thinking?
It sounds crazy to say this, but we all felt that it was the most eerie thing we have ever felt. It felt like nothing else. It was very strange. It felt like we were all sinking, like you were talking to all these people, this community, and everything went dark. Your connection was completely lost, and it was extremely anxiety producing. And many people have built a community there. Many people are homebodies. They were home the whole pandemic. They're loners. They may not have family. They connected with other people. They were nurses. They were, hair stylists, people that are valet parkers, people that are UPS guys that got attention and connected and felt like they had this family. And it's not just about people making money. It's not just about that. That's what people think. It's not. It was a community that is different than any other. And everybody felt like they lost their community. It was eerie and chilling.
I love that you used specifically the term community, because that's what I always think about with what you're describing. It's that, especially after the pandemic, people are seeking community. They want to be around like-minded individuals. They want to feel a part of something. And that is connection. They want that connection, and they can get that while still being at home. It feels safe. And that's also why TikTok was so great for small business owners, right?
It was amazing. Well, small business owners, yes. I know one business that went from 0 to 60 million a year.
Wow.
But in addition, small people that just had normal jobs that they didn't feel good about, that they didn't love, left their jobs, and this is their main source of income. I mean, they found a way to be themselves and connect and monetize it. Also for disaster relief, it was amazing. For, misinformation, there's a big thing that people think that the government doesn't want us all talking about things like drones, like COVID before it was a mainstream topic, like politics. We're having it's our own news network, and it's citizens journalism. And I know some people that are reporting more accurately than the actual mainstream media. So there's a lot here. It's not just money. It's not just dances. It's not just trends. It's a community of 170 million people sharing information and telling things that they've seen, and you can't hide. Celebrities have been canceled because of it, because it's the people. It's the most democratic thing that you've ever seen.
Well, and that's what's really fascinating about this, Bethany, when you talk about the people and the people taking back and having their power. But what is so interesting about the fact that for you just to call TikTok like one of the greatest tools of democracy that we have, but it's Chinese owned. Do you think that this is too big of a platform to lose for all that it offers? Or do you see the national security concerns? Do you think that this is about national security?
What I think is that there are people more powerful than the president-elect or the president that make the decisions. There are places where all the billions of dollars that disappear that go to other programs, that those people or entities are in charge. So if Trump has the final say, which I don't believe that he ultimately does, but if he does have the final say, he would want it to stay in play because it's such a marketing tool for politics, because he doesn't seem to leave a lot of money on the floor, and it's a multi-billion-dollar asset that makes money, and he loves making money, and he loves, so I think that that's, if he has the final say, it will stay, but it is a law. And it's about so much more than just what Donald Trump wants and what Kevin O'Leary or Elon Musk or Meta wants. I think it's about, are we allowed to be sharing information that the government and the mainstream media doesn't want us to be sharing? And do we want, it's not just about our data. We are ants. And what we're told is one scintilla of what's actually going on. So we can all speculate, but we don't know.
Look, I wanna pause and just let that stick, because you're saying some things that are some things, and I appreciate it. Bethany, before we go, I want to ask you about the work that you're doing with your initiative called Be Strong. You've helped, I mean, so many different disasters, but especially those right now impacted by the wildfires in Southern California. How important was it for you to help provide some relief to the community there, as you have with other communities impacted by other disasters?
So myself and my partner, Jem, we have now raised almost $4 million in money and over $17 million in aid. We were first there. We will be there long after the headlines fade. And it's money directly to the people. 100% goes to the effort. And it is charity with dignity. Charity with complete clarity and transparency. And most importantly, even compared to government initiatives, because I've seen all of the data, we are more lean and efficient with the way that we utilize a dollar. We stretch a dollar. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of corruption. I'm not saying that about government. And all of this piles of clothing and dumping water at places, it's not what they need. So we know what they need. And I need to shout out North Carolina, because we are speaking to the governor of North Carolina's office tomorrow. We have called out Donald Trump to help us and talk to us. We don't need their money.